We welcome the Democratic nominee for president, Secretary Clinton, and the Republican nominee for president, Mr. Trump.
Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump go all in at the final U.S. presidential debate in Las Vegas. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C., and this is The Heat. Trading accusations of rigged elections and inexperience, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton fought it out during the third and final U.S. presidential debate. CCTV's Nathan King was at the debate, and he joins us now from Las Vegas. And Nathan, this was the final debate, the final chance for the two major presidential candidates to face off. What were the major takeaways?
Well, the major takeaway, Anna, was we actually had a debate, at least for the first third of the 90 minutes. You know, it was pretty civil for 30 minutes. There was exchanges and stark differences on everything from women's rights to abortion to immigration, picks for the U.S. Supreme Court and other areas of domestic policy like gun control. But then suddenly we started seeing the personal attacks come back. Hillary Clinton accusing Donald Trump of basically being a puppet of Vladimir Putin if he was to become a president. No puppet, replied Donald Trump, hitting him again about his accusations of lewd behavior around women as well. But really, the takeaway from the debate was the fact that Donald Trump, he's been hinting about this on the campaign trail, but actually said in front of tens of millions of Americans that if the result goes against him in the presidential election, he may not respect it.
Do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time.
Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Unprecedented in U.S. political history, at least modern political history. He has, as they say in political circles, Anand, walked this line back a little bit at a rally that he held after the debate. Donald Trump has been saying that he will respect the result, but only if he wins.
So, Nathan, we have less than 3 weeks until the U.S. presidential election. What can we expect in this final stretch?
Well, I mean, barnstorming across the United States, especially the swing states. Now, remember, the electoral map looks very, very good for Hillary Clinton. She's up around 8 points ahead of Donald Trump. And those swing states that really decide the election, she's going to spend a lot of time in. We're talking about Ohio. We're talking about Florida. We're talking about North Carolina as well, which has been traditionally Republican. But the map has opened up for her as well. Arizona, a deeply red state near here, Nevada in the west. She is going to be campaigning there as well. Where does Donald Trump go? He has to take Ohio. He has to take Florida. He has to take North Carolina. He kind of has to take Pennsylvania as well as a New Hampshire. The electoral map does not look good for him, especially trailing in the polls. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happened with this debate and whether it affects the opinion polls as well. Remember, there's still about 10 to 15% of the American electorate that haven't decided yet.
Thanks, Nathan. That's CCTV's Nathan King reporting from Las Vegas. Joining us now, Chen Weihua is the chief Washington correspondent and deputy editor for China Daily. From London, Abdelbari Otwan is editor-in-chief of Rai Al-Yum, an independent Arabic newspaper. From Las Vegas, Holger Stark is the Washington bureau chief correspondent for Der Spiegel magazine. And from North Carolina, Mary C. Curtis is a columnist for Roll Call, a U.S. political news website. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Well, as we just heard from Nathan, we had a debate. I want to start by getting your impressions of the main moments of that debate. Let's start with you, Chen Weihua. What was the major moment for you?
Well, I agree with Nathan that this debate is better than the previous two in the sense that more substance is being discussed. I mean, the previous one, I mean, people like to quote Michelle Obama, like when they go low, we go high. But in the previous two, I think it's pretty much like when they go low, we go lower. So I think, for, a lot of people, I think the moderator, Mike Wallace, is very effective in maintaining the order. And Donald Trump, I mean, the headline today is all about he would not accept maybe the result. I mean, I think, there was, the Hillary is really, he is like pivoting away, to Russia when asked about the WikiLeaks, these fundamental issues. I think that's the moment, I would say.
Abdelbari Otwan, what struck you about the debate?
Well, to be honest, I was impressed for the first time for the performance of Donald Trump. For the first time, as I said, he was well prepared. He did his homework, but unfortunately, in the end, he blew it up when he said he is not going to respect the outcome of the ballot box, which is very, very dangerous. It is true, in a rally, he said that he will accept it, but the problem is he had the best chance to talk to tens of millions of people in the United States and all over the world. And he shouldn't actually made that blunder. He should say, okay, I respect the ballot boxes, whatever the outcome, it is actually for the interest of everybody, but he lost it. Other point which struck me, to be honest, when it comes to the foreign policy, he was actually much better than Hillary Clinton, despite he never been a Secretary of State. So when he talked about Iraq, when he talked about Russia, when he talked about Syria. So it seems he learned his lessons, from previous setbacks. So, but the problem is, as I said, that the ballot boxes are the most important things, and he should respect it. To say that the election could be rigged, he talked like a third world leader, not as American, president or future president. And he should be actually very, very careful when he talks about these kind of, issues, which is very, very essential, very sensitive to all American people.
Okay, I want to get to foreign policy in just a moment, but let me bring in Holger Stark. He's in Las Vegas, the venue where this took place. Holger, what was your takeaway from this?
Well, I had the pleasure to be in the debate hall yesterday, and I think Donald Trump didn't too bad. He had some remarkable points, especially exposing Hillary Clinton's weaknesses when it came to the Clinton Foundation, but also when it came to the free trade agreements like NAFTA and others. So he could have scored well, but on one hand, I agree with the colleagues who said that this deep disdain for democratic principle like the election really hurt him badly. And on the other hand, Trump didn't need a tie. He basically is trailing in almost every important swing state, as Nathan had pointed out. So Donald Trump really needed to score big yesterday night, and I think he failed in that.
Mary C. Curtis, what did you think?
Well, as everyone else has said, he was speaking to his base on issues from the Supreme Court to gun control. The problem is he needs to expand his base if he is to win, particularly with these suburban white women in states like I am here in North Carolina. And he didn't do that. And of course, he guaranteed what the headline would be when he said he would not accept the results of the election. I just came today from a Tim Kaine rally, who was the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket, and that was his headline, that Donald Trump doesn't respect the democratic process. And you will see all of the candidates, their surrogates and spouses here in North Carolina, because he needs to win this state if he is to win the election. And Hillary Clinton doesn't need to do it. So if she wins here, then really the election is over.
Chen Weihua, let's unpack some of what took place in that debate on Wednesday night. China was mentioned 7 times during the debate, specifically Hillary Clinton's criticism that China was dumping steel in the United States. That's Chinese exports of steel and aluminium to the United States. Let's watch a bit of what happened.
He mentioned China, and one of the biggest problems we have with China is the illegal dumping of steel and aluminum into our markets. I have fought against that as a senator. I've stood up against it as Secretary of State. Donald has bought Chinese steel and aluminum. In fact, the Trump hotel right here in Las Vegas was made with Chinese steel. So he goes around with crocodile tears about how terrible it is, but he has given jobs to Chinese steel workers, not American steel workers.
Mr. Trump? Why has China become such a convenient whipping boy during these debates? I mean, we heard this not just in this debate, but in previous debates as well.
Yeah, I mean, previous campaign, 2012, going even further ahead. I mean, the main thing is because China is rising, fast. So, the American politics always need sort of adversary enemy. It's like you have the guts if you take on China and the heavyweight. But I think what's troubling here is really the sort of protectionism, voiced by both candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I mean, what's wrong with, say, Trump Tower using steel from China, or Hillary Clinton has charged him also like having shirts made in China or Mexico. What's wrong with that? I mean, I would love to see actually one day the United States making the shirts and maybe steel, and China making, airplanes, maybe high-tech products. What kind of America you want? I mean, Hillary Clinton want America to be, I mean, low-end assembly line. So I think, if you look at the world, I mean, Britain and the United States, anti-trade, anti-globalization is a serious issue. And you look at China, I mean, for 40 years, I mean, the West pressed China for more trade. Now China suddenly becomes the champion of globalization and open trade. I mean, you just look at the reality today. I mean, so I think, but this rhetoric, it's like, is appealing to the voters, and that's really troubling. I mean, it's like, someone just cited the Tim Kaine, I mean, talking in the last vice presidential debate, accusing his Michael Pence of, Trump calling Vladimir Putin a leader. What's wrong? I mean, he is a leader. I mean, you like him or not. I mean, so I think this kind of a political correctness is really deeply sad. I mean, I can tell, I mean, Hillary Clinton, I mean, he called the TPP gold standards, but for Trump campaign purposes, she now is denying it. I mean, say, I don't like it, But I think this is, I mean, if you look at in the email, she has a private rhetoric and versus a public rhetoric. I mean, the low trustworthiness, I think this is deeply troubling.
Right, and right now we're hearing a lot of, I guess, what would be called election rhetoric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abdel Bari Atwan, let's talk about foreign policy. Let's talk about the Middle East. Here we have one of the world's great flashpoints. We've got Syria lurching from one crisis to the other. The war continuing in Iraq. Egypt, which has been called by Human Rights Watch one of the worst violators of human rights. Libya becoming a sanctuary for ISIL. And, of course, we are nowhere near a resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But did we hear much about this in the debate? Did you get the feeling that these candidates, or what these candidates would do about that?
Well, to be honest, I was extremely disappointed because foreign policy was not a major focus of the two candidates. They talked about Syria, they talked about Iraq, but they ignored most of the other issues. And definitely the people in the Middle East, which is the most or the hottest area in the world now, they will be extremely disappointed. They expected, for example, Hillary Clinton to say something concrete about the situation in Syria or in Iraq. The same thing, Donald Trump. Okay, I agree that Donald Trump was absolutely correct when he described, in a way or another, the American foreign policy in a huge mess in Iraq and Syria. He actually said, I did not vote for the war in Iraq, but I believe the Americans should not leave, actually, before sorting everything in Iraq, actually, make it stable. And also, he accused the American administration of being responsible, or the American invasion being responsible for the emergence of Islamic State in that part of the world. The same thing, I believe, also I agree with him. I believe President Putin outplayed Hillary Clinton and also Obama in both countries, in Syria in particular. So it seems, he is also more intelligent, much cleverer than both leaders in particular. So I think, yes, Middle East actually is suffering because of the American mishandling of the situation there. Hillary Clinton is absolutely responsible for the disaster that took place in Libya, and President Obama said clearly he regret giving the green light for the military intervention in Libya. Now the Russians have the upper hand in Syria completely. They are actually running the show. Again, Donald Trump was absolutely correct when he said, the Iranians have the upper hand in Iraq. They have more influence than anybody else in that country, supposed to be actually liberated by the American invasion, changing the regime there, and the outcome is disastrous. And we see now there is a war in Mosul. We don't know how it will come, how many people will be killed. So when it comes to the foreign policy, I believe, you know, Donald Trump actually managed to embarrass Hillary Clinton, and he had the upper hand in this question in particular. Despite she was the foreign secretary, she should know better about the Middle East. She's been there several times, but when it comes to the foreign policy, I believe, you know, Donald Trump has the upper hands, and the Hillary Clinton wasn't actually convincing when it comes to that question in particular.
Right. Holger, you know, as Abdel Bari Atwan points out, Russia has become a big issue in this election. It looks like Vladimir Putin has very reluctantly become part of the campaign here. Let's take a listen to part of the exchange on Russia.
Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way, whether it's Syria, you name it, missiles. Take a look at the startup that they signed. The Russians have said, according to many, many reports, I can't believe they allowed us to do this. They create warheads and we can't. The Russians can't believe it. She has been outsmarted by Putin.
So, Holger, why has Russia become such a big issue?
Well, I think Vladimir Putin is simply paying back what he believes America deserves. Don't forget that Hillary Clinton, as a Secretary of State, in 2011 called the Russian election rigged and fabricated when Vladimir Putin has been re-elected. And I think he didn't forget that. And now he uses this opportunity via cyber war for payback time. So there is obviously a Russian group from the Russian military intelligence that has used to manage to infiltrate several times in the last year a couple of American institutions, the Democratic Party, for instance, but a couple of others as well. And they are now playing very well with that material and trying to spread mistrust. And I think in addition to that, Putin believes that Donald Trump is the much easier partner for him to deal with as a next president. So he really would like to see Donald Trump in the White House. And he's playing it very smart. It's very hard to find forensic evidence that really proves that Russia is behind that. In cyberspace, everybody can stand up basically and try to pretend to be someone else. But the motive seems to be pretty clear here. And I think Hillary Clinton tried to make that connection yesterday between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin in Moscow. But my assessment is that the American public is not really interested in that. So Donald Trump gets away with that.
Right, Mary, all of you cited the fact that... Go ahead.
Yeah, to be honest, I am surprised why Donald Trump is heavily criticized and considered as a puppet of Putin. What's wrong in having a good relation with another superpower leader, for example? What's wrong with being a friend of Putin? I think this could be extremely useful for the whole of the world. Maybe when they are friends, when they are closer to each other, they can solve the problems. They can avoid wars. They can avoid, Cold War or hot war, whatever. So they can actually coordinate their, action in the Middle East itself and other places which face crisis. They can actually work together to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I'm surprised. Why not? Why shall we always be hostile to each other?
Yeah. Okay, we'll see what happens after the election as far as that relationship is concerned. Mary, I'm going to get to you. And, all of you cited the fact that Donald Trump refused to say whether he would respect the outcome of the election that takes place in early November. Now, one of our reporters talked to Congresswoman Judy Chu about the implications of what Trump said. Let's watch this.
We were able to find out that Donald Trump wouldn't even abide by the results of this election. To me, that was stunning. For every presidential election that we've had up till now, the candidates accept whatever the results are. And then we try to come together as a country to move forward. But no, he won't abide by that. And I think that's very dangerous and is very divisive.
So, Mary, why is it so important that the losing candidate, whomever that candidate is, concedes?
Well, our democracy depends on it, which is why so many people are upset on both sides, both Republicans and Democrats. Republican senators like Jeff Flake of Arizona and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina quickly took him to task. They look at someone like Al Gore, who won the popular vote in 2000, and at a certain point said, let's come together. And he conceded as a country, even though it was very close and the Supreme Court stopped the recount. And many people feel, too, that Republicans in state legislatures around the country have been trying to put the specter of voter fraud, that there are fraudulent votes happening all over the country, and when in reality studies have shown that it's virtually non-existent. Here in the state of North Carolina, there was a strict voter ID bill that was thrown out by the courts because it said it was going after African American voters with surgical precision, because many of these laws affected African Americans, the poor, the elderly, and students. So they feel that this is actually means that after the elections, there'll be many people who basically will not accept the winner as legitimate if the winner isn't Donald Trump. And considering that previously he had spent so much time saying that President Obama was not legitimate, saying that he wasn't born in this country, they feel it will just be gridlock again as another president is elected. And if that president is Hillary Clinton, there'll be many people who just will not accept her, and the government will be in gridlock. And this is not something that anyone is looking forward to. As it is now, we still have a Supreme Court justice nominee languishing because the Congress refused to even consider his nomination by President Obama.
Mary, another issue which didn't come up during the debate, and that is the issue of race relations in the United States. Were you disappointed that none of the candidates addressed that?
I was extremely disappointed. And the previous debate was in Missouri, not that far from Ferguson, Missouri, that had a police shooting, violent aftermath, and a Justice Department investigation that showed police procedures that really were targeting people of color. And so now you have this issue, and here in Charlotte, North Carolina, there was a shooting and some violent protest afterwards that centered on inequality in the community. And the fact that a previous police shooting, nothing had happened as far as the police officer was, it was a hung jury, so no one, paid for that. And this is something that is continuing. So you have Donald Trump and Mike Pence saying the problem is that we need more law and order. And stop and frisk, which stops primarily people of color and has been shown to be unconstitutional or judged to be unconstitutional. And you have Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine who are talking more about there needs to be respect for law, but also that the law has to respect the people in the communities. You also have had Donald Trump saying that people of color live in communities, they live in hell, and there's been some resentment of that as well. So it seems to me that the issue has been given totally short shrift in all of the debates. And after the election is over, no matter what happens, you will still have these divisions in the United States. And I really would have liked to have heard the candidates address that directly.
I think, Arnaud, if I may step in here, Arnaud, I think Hillary Clinton believes that she has the African-American electorate already on her side. And on the other hand, Donald Trump basically stopped reaching out to that community. So to me, it sounds very much that he has given up that part of the electorate and that he's more interested in appealing to his core voter base and probably even already is preparing for the day after the election and for a potential loss in spinning conspiracy theories and not trying to reach out to African-American voters.
Holger, do you think she's taking the African-American vote for granted?
I think she believes so, maybe not in the same dimension as Barack Obama did in the last two elections, and Donald Trump probably just got the numbers right. He has almost no chance in obtaining more than like 2 or 3% in that electorate. So he probably has given up and really tries to satisfy his white core, undereducated electorate that he is appealing to.
Right.
But she does need the turnout. She needs the turnout. That's why she has folks like Michelle Obama, who is incredibly popular, out on the stump to try to energize young people and African Americans to come out and vote because she needs the turnout.
Right. Chen Wei-hua, another big issue that wasn't discussed, an issue that preoccupies the world, it's an international issue, and that's climate change. It's a big issue in China as well. No discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite obvious. I mean, this issue, which is sort of the major achievement during the Obama administration with China. I mean, Hillary Clinton obviously is in for, fighting the climate change, and Donald Trump is not. So, I mean, the result is quite obvious. Trump's presidency means probably the end of the China-U.S. dialogue in cooperation in this area. Probably, I mean, China will be the only maybe champion. I mean, the U.S. is not going to do anything. But, Hillary Clinton probably will going to just have more cooperation. I don't know. I can't just, comment on the previous one. I think,
Sure.
I think, as an outsider, non-American, I think you should accept the result. But I do think there was this campaign as outsider. This is very problematic. I mean, if you look at the campaign finance, how much money, one candidate outspent the other, and the nasty rhetoric, I think there should be an ethical committee, really guarding that. And also, personally, I do think President Obama doesn't even should, campaign. He is paid by all American, Republican, Democrats, independents alike. Should just work for 300 million Americans, not one party candidate.
Right. There were a whole lot of questions about ethics and legitimacy of the election. Abdel Bari Outwan, what do you make of, we had this back and forth about the Clinton Foundation and the fact that they receive money from countries like Saudi Arabia and from Qatar. In fact, Donald Trump kept insisting that the foundation return the money. Was that relevant to the debate, really?
I believe it is completely irrelevant. Donald Trump upsetted many people in the Middle East, actually, when he said Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states should pay for the American protection of these countries. And also, I believe he is trying to tarnish Clinton Foundation images by saying that how these countries receiving money from actually dictatorship and human rights abusers like Saudi Arabia in particular. So, but I believe, he is absolutely very unpopular when it comes to the Middle East, because he said many bad things about the Muslims, and he said we should actually ban them from entering the United States. And now he is trying to actually do all the dirty works or the dirty things about the Clinton Foundation in order to tarnish its image and to try to score some points against Hillary Clinton and her husband. This is the problem. But I believe, some part of the Middle East actually saying, okay, we know Hillary Clinton. She is actually not good to the Middle East. She actually supporting Israel. She was behind the problems in Libya and the chaos there, the mess which is taking place. Okay, we know her, so we are not really happy. Okay, let us try somebody else. Maybe Trump, he will do something different. Maybe he will coordinate some sort of foreign policies in the Middle East with Vladimir Putin. Maybe he will be also, coordinating his efforts with China. China is now very popular in the Middle East. We don't know yet, but I believe, this kind of referring to Saudi Arabia, I think it is actually sort of opportunism by his side.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Great discussion. That's all we have time for, but the conversation continues online. Chat with us about this or any other show on Twitter. We're at CCTV_America. We also use Facebook. Find us at facebook.com/CCTV America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.